planning commission meeting to order. We'll call the planning commission meeting to order. January 15th, 2025. Welcome, everybody. Right at 2 o'clock. Let's go ahead and have a roll call.
Yeah. Commissioner Carpenter is absent. Commissioner Sager,
Here.
Commissioner Stahl,
Here.
Chair Wheeler,
Here.
Commissioner Tucker.
Here.
And then we have Commissioner Perkins.
Here.
Awesome.
All right. We have enough to do business today. First item of business is the approval of the November 20th, 2024 meeting minutes.
I move to approve.
We got a motion. We got a second.
Second.
Do we need to discuss it all? Everything looks pretty, okay. I guess let's vote on them. All those in favor, please raise your right hand.
Yep.
Okay, motion carries. Commission business, it looks like we have none. I do have a question preceding our actual public hearings. So in our packet, we have a handful of staff reports regarding chapter 16. And it was a little bit different format than we've seen in the past as far as what's coming to us. And so I just wanted to know if that was going to be a normal process. Maybe directed at Alan.
I'm sorry, I am logging in and I did not catch that. Could you repeat that, please?
Just looking at the second part of our meeting, item B, ordinance 2025-01, all the code amendments.
Yes.
So some of those look like they're prompted by persons or peoples or committees and other things. Is that something that's we're gonna see more frequently now?
Well, we just put out an RFP for a more comprehensive code audit that will hopefully inform a more comprehensive code amendment process in the next year or so. Yeah, we prefer not to do these little piecemeal amendment packages. So I don't know. I mean, they do just come up from time to time. Sometimes either planning commission or council has something that they really want to fix. And so we'll, kind of gather together what we have to amend and do a package like this. But as far as I know, I don't know that there's another package on deck to present to you guys anytime soon.
And the only reason I kind of ask is, I don't kind of ask, I actually ask, is, I typically don't get too far ahead of myself as far as looking at the agenda. And so today I saw these and it's like, well, shoot, I probably should have dove into them a little bit more and asked around because and the other part of that is like, is there an option to do a first reading and a second reading at the planning commission level, even though it's set up to do a first reading and then a second reading, a third reading for council?
So you don't have to make a decision today. You can read through it and then have discussion because this is not a public hearing.
Okay.
And then table it for your next meeting. So if there's portions of this that you aren't sure of, you want to have more time or you have more questions about, you can always table it and then have it on your next agenda.
Okay. And I was just thinking considerably about your guys' timelines. I know that there's 45-day windows and 21-day windows and all these different notices. So
And
I don't want to screw that up, but I also don't want to do us a disservice by not doing what we're supposed to do here as a planning commission.
Yeah. And that, because this is not an applicant coming to us with a land use decision, the timeline is not specific like that. This is internally, the city council recommended these changes. And so that's why they're updating.
Perfect. Okay, then we'll go about our business and go through it. And as a commission, we'll figure out the direction we want to go.
Could I ask a question related to that?
Sure.
Just how Ben brought up the format. They're all together in one agenda item, but they're all radically different from each other, different, totally different issues, even though they're all code changes. Are we going to be considering them one by one or as some kind of package?
It's a package. So you'll be considering the ordinance altogether and just making a recommendation to the council as to whether they should adopt it or not.
Adopt parking changes and psilocybin and painting all at once.
Yeah. There's three pretty disparate issues that the ordinance encapsulates that are, yeah, that they've been packaged.
So we could, well, I guess this is maybe for later when we get into it, but
Mhm.
can we make our recommendation as yes for some things and no for others, or,
Sure, you could recommend with changes.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Tara. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into our public hearings. If there's no further questions, sorry. Assuming we're moving forward, but, let's go into the public hearings. We'll go land partition 2024-04 LP, the Lock Martin, partition.
All right, so I will present staff's report to the planning commission for the Lock Martin land partition 2024-04 LP. The applicant is Stephen Tiffany Locke. The contact is Michael McElroy, who is present today. And the property is tax lot 34E 17B. That's the tax lot map and the lot 5500. And the proposal is a 2-lot partition of a 1-acre property at 1226 Northwest Park Ave, which is in the relatively new Lock Martin Industrial Subdivision. We received agency comments from the city engineer and the fire marshal. And so here's an aerial shot from 2024. The lot in question is at the corner of Northwest Park and Northwest Martin Streets. Public services are provided to the boundary of the existing lot, and the lot it's pretty flat with minimal slope. And this is a zoom in of our comprehensive plan map. So you can see it's in the M1 light industrial zone. And it's surrounded by light industrial uses and properties. It's not adjacent to any residential properties or zones. And just an overview of the details. It's a partition for future industrial development. The existing lot is about 1 acre in size. The new lots would be about 0.54 and 0.46 acres. There's no minimum lot size in the light industrial zone, so there's no standard to meet there. The north lot would front Northwest Park Avenue, and the south lot would front Northwest Martin Street. There are no frontage improvements, site improvements, or new construction proposed in this application. Okay, and here is a map that was provided as part of the application. Outlined in yellow is the existing lot, and if you can see there, the dashed red line there running through the middle is the proposed partition line. So the chapters of the municipal code that are relevant to this application are 16.39 light industrial, 16.74 concurrency, which ensures that transportation infrastructure is built concurrent to development, 16.116, which are subdivision design standards and improvements, and 16.120, which deals with partitions. And if you read the staff report that I wrote, all of the relevant criteria can be met or have been met. And so staff's recommendation is for approval of this application with proposed conditions of approval. And there are 6 conditions of approval proposed. One just says that it's a 2-lot partition that's approved similar to the preliminary plan. The second, utilities will be provided underground prior to final plat approval. The third, sidewalks and driveways are installed prior to building permit approval. 4, no parcels can be sold before final plat approval. The 5th, partition applications or subsequent partition applications within 1 year will be subject to planning commission determination. And 6 is a 2-year approval for validity window. All right, and next steps, any public comment? Commission can ask questions and then discuss, and then we'll be looking for a motion to approve with changes, or deny with findings.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for staff at this point in time? Tara, you have any questions at this point in time?
Nope.
Okay. It doesn't look like we have any questions, so let's go ahead and we'll exit the planning commission meeting, and we're gonna enter into the public hearing portion of this particular partition. I'm gonna read a statement about evidence right now. An issue which may be the basis for appeal to the city council must be raised prior to the close of the record at the final evidentiary hearing on the specific application. Such issues shall be raised with sufficient specificity as to afford the city council and other parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure of an issue to be raised at the hearing in person or by letter, or failure to provide sufficient specificity to afford the council and all parties an adequate opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the city council on that issue. With that being said, Mr. Mike McElroy, would you introduce yourself and give your official address and give us the Reader's Digest version if you'd like?
I'm Michael McElroy, 1275 Northeast Cooper Lane, Estacada, Oregon. Employee of Lock Buildings, representing Steve and Tiffany Lock's interest in the lot partition. Steve has plans to develop part of that lot for a new business that's coming in that doesn't need a lot of extra parking, exterior parking, and wants to keep that space to be able to develop another building on to increase the tax base for the city of Estacada. 2 STCs instead of 1.
Any questions? As far as
I-
utilities get, oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Tara.
Sorry, that sounds great. I just had a quick question. I was curious what the business was.
I didn't get permission from the business that's coming in there to share that yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a good, I mean, great company. It's a local company from the area that's renting a space that wants to get into a space of their own.
Excellent.
Okay.
As far as utilities go, pretty straightforward as far as splitting them.
Yeah, we're actually going to be doing shared utility. Everything's stubbed out oversized on the laterals to that lot. There's a 6-inch water line that can be split to service both the half-acre lots, and we're going to do easements. I spoke with Dawn about it from Public Works, and we got to get some easements put in place for it, but it'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Questions? All right. Doesn't look like we have any other questions.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. It doesn't appear that we have anybody else in the audience to speak on the application. Is there anybody online that signed up to speak, Evelyn? Okay, let's go ahead and we will just close that public hearing and reopen the planning commission meeting and keep this simple. Alan, would you be kind enough to put those options of approval? And I have to ask you this every time. Maybe it's because we don't meet enough. Is this a recommendation of city council or is this our decision outright?
It is your decision outright.
Okay. Okay. So as Alan brings us up, we need a motion and a second to approve this partition.
Motion to approve.
Second,
We have a motion and a second, just to clarify, with the conditions as presented by staff?
Yes.
Okay. Tara, are you still okay with that, second?
yeah, I thought that's what we meant.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure, so there's no room for, not going down the road.
Yeah,
Specific exactly what we're moving for, like, the file name like 2024-04-LP. Move to approve that and then.
Sure, let's give Ryan, since it's her first, motion, I think officially, let's give her another stab at it.
Okay, so I am moved to approve land partition 2024-04-LP Lock Martin with the staff conditions.
Yep,
Is that everything?
that'll work. Terry, you're still good with that? Tara?
yep, still seconding.
Okay, perfect. All right, now we're good.
Very good.
Any further discussion needed? Doesn't appear to, so all in favor, please raise your right hand or say aye if you're online. There we go. All right.
Sorry, my
Alright.
Reliance Connects is very tricky today.
We'll figure it out. We'll work with you. All right, so that takes care of that. Mike, you'll obviously continue to work with Alan on any planning related stuff and they'll get the staff report finalized. I think I probably have one to sign here if I
You do.
had to guess.
That's right.
So, by end of day today, my part will be done. And our part is done officially.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Yep, see you later. All right, next up, we have that ordinance 2025-01, Title 16 Development Code Amendments. And this is what we kind of talked about a little bit in the beginning of the meeting, but let's go ahead and have the staff report on this and dive into it fully.
All right, let me pull it up. I think this is it. Is this it? Nope, that is not it.
Hey, Evelyn, in the meantime, could you turn my mic sensitivity down a little bit every time I
There
drop
we
my
go.
pin? 5, yeah. The 2 or 3 people online are probably loving it.
All right, there we go. All right, so this is the first meeting in the adoption process for this development codes amendment package. These amendments were specifically requested by City Council, who have discussed these amendments with staff at public meetings late last year. So today, Planning Commission will consider this proposal and make a recommendation to City Council as to whether or not to adopt these amendments. And just to orient everyone. So today, first I'll give an overview of the proposed code amendments. And then I will kind of go over how the proposal meets criteria and why we are recommending to approve. I'll then take any questions from commissioners. If there's anyone that wants to give public testimony, they can do it at that time. And then we'll be looking for a planning commission recommendation, motion, discuss, and vote. Okay, so this amendments package, as we discussed earlier, is composed of 3 main parts. There's a downtown design review process revision. There's a parking modification process and standards creation, and a psilocybin sales and services prohibition. So yeah, those are the 3 main disparate parts of this. And so the ordinance proposes to change 4 sections of the development code. So that's Title 16, and I'll go over those now. So the first is Chapter 16.08, which is our definitions chapter. And the amendments add definitions for psilocybin and related activities. And then there's Chapter 16.26 that deals with our downtown zone. And so the amendments would remove the public noticing requirement for Type 1 design reviews. And clarify that the repainting of structures with matching or similarly colored paint does not require downtown design review. And these came about because staff noticed some issues with the last set of revisions to the downtown design review code, specifically related to minor staff reviews and the exterior application of paint. And then there's Chapter 16.65, which currently deals with marijuana retailing, production, and processing. And so last year, in November, Estacada residents voted to prohibit psilocybin production, processing, retailing, and operation of service centers within city limits. And so these amendments are reflecting that. There's also a recommendation to change the name of this chapter to simply controlled substances, since it now would not be dealing just with marijuana. And then the final chapter is 16.76, which deals with off-street parking, bicycle parking, and loading requirements. And so last year, a few local businesses ran into problems with the city's off-street parking requirements. And so council has directed staff to draft code language that would create a process to allow local businesses to request a modification to off-street parking requirements. The amendments also specify that Planning Commission would be in charge of rendering modification decisions. And they also include a process for revoking any approved modifications under specified conditions, specifically if the modifications are found to cause any problems, safety issues, etc. And so now we'll look at the approval criteria. So any development code amendment must be initiated by Planning Commission or Council and be reviewed by Planning Commission and then Council. And to adopt amendments, the city is required to make findings that the amendments satisfy all relevant approval criteria. And this includes statewide planning goals, the city's own comprehensive plan policies, and the city's development code regulations relating to legislative amendments. So that is EMC 16.128 seen here. And so the staff report describes in detail how this package of amendments satisfies each applicable approval criterion. So if council agrees, then they have the authority to adopt the amendments. And now I will summarize how the amendments satisfy the relevant criteria. And these are the relevant criteria as shown. So S is for a statewide goal and C is for the city comprehensive plan goal. And so as you can see, the statewide goals align fairly closely with the city's comp plan goals in terms of number. And the first two sets of goals are procedural. The first requires the city to involve community members in planning and decision-making processes. And the second requires the city to follow an established comprehensive planning process and requires interagency coordination when appropriate. And the third is the city's economic development goal chapter. And so just to show you, these are the goals that did not apply to this ordinance, which is most of the goals in both the statewide planning goals and the city's comp plan goals. And so as I mentioned before, the first two sets of goals are procedural and they've been met or are being met at this very moment. However, comp plan chapter 7, which is economic development, contains a couple goals that apply to these code amendments, and I'll just go over those really quick. So general policy 6, which reads that the city should position Estacada as a supportive and responsive business environment. The proposed ordinance supports this goal by providing a means for relieving excessively burdensome parking requirements for local businesses and by removing public noticing and application fee requirements for downtown design review applicants. And then there's downtown policy 6, which specifically applies to the downtown zone. And that reads, city should implement design guidelines and standards, including an exterior paint palette that maintains the character of downtown and its historic aesthetic, as well as regulations for signs that require pedestrian scale, pedestrian-oriented signage while prohibiting large auto-oriented signage. And so this ordinance supports this goal by allowing the city to implement its design guidelines and standards more efficiently than it currently does. And so staff's recommendation is to approve this ordinance, so Planning Commission would recommend approval of the ordinance. That's his staff's recommendation. And so we've done the overview, talked about the staff report and how the proposal meets the criteria. Next steps are to take questions from commissioners. If there's anyone that wants to give public testimony afterwards, they can do that then. And then Planning Commission can discuss making a recommendation with a motion, discussion, and a vote. And that's it. I'll hand it back to you, Ben.
Okay. So we got quite a bit to go through. And like you said, 3 kind of distinct parts.
Yes.
As a planning commission, do we want to break the parts down and then put them back together if need be? Does that sound?
I think that sounds good. I think that sounds easiest to digest rather than free ranging over 3 totally different things.
Okay.
I'm with Tara too.
Okay. Tara, why don't you, since you're the lucky one online, why don't you give us the first one you want to talk about?
What did I do? I mean, we could just go in order. We could start with the paint one. That seems pretty cut and dried to me. That anything that makes it so that someone can paint their building in the same color without creating work for everybody else sounds great. Is that controversial in any way?
So this particular thing means that they don't have to take it to staff or anybody else and say, hey, we're gonna paint our building, but we're using an approved color. Do they have to bring that to you and tell you what they're doing, or do you just let them go? And
No, so yeah, so the way that it would work is if a paint palette has been approved for a structure, they wouldn't have to apply again to get it, to touch it up or paint over the colors with a new color. basically.
So
So
that-
what happened, what prompted this is that Sol Tapatio basically was gonna paint the same color scheme,
Sure.
and our code was unclear enough that it prompted us to have them do a downtown design review for it. So I had to write a staff report. It just was a little silly in that case, and it just brought that code issue to our attention. So we're looking to,
So the
Clean that
process,
up.
the process is they can just go ahead and, if they're using the same color, they can just go ahead and paint their building.
yeah, if
Yeah.
approved, yes. If it matches the approved paint palette of the city, then they can go ahead and just paint.
And they don't have to report to anybody, they don't have to tell anybody they're painting anything, they don't have to do anything, but just paint the building. Okay,
Yes.
I get it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Tara, can you hear Scott?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, I was curious, there was one part in that, in the, on the part where you actually make the changes, that it struck the person having to include, they're making an application for other design review things, but they strike their name and address and the address of the property. That's being removed from any applications. Am I understanding that right?
No, I took that out, or I'm suggesting taking it out because it's redundant. I mean,
Okay,
that's just like anyone that's
see.
submitting an application has to do that. It just seemed a little silly to
to enshrine it in code. Okay. I
yeah,
get
I
it.
just didn't see any reason to lay it out there.
Okay.
Oops.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's not probably. What about food carts? We have red food carts, we have green food carts, we have blue food carts, we have an orange food cart, I think. We had one that was kind of a peach color.
Okay, yeah.
Are those all approved colors, and do they fall under the city paints? And if they don't, are we digging too much in the details if we're gonna let a blue food cart go in downtown? And I don't have anything against the food carts by any means, but
Yeah.
Sure.
like we're kind of isolating our thoughts to one building or one type of structure.
So,
Permanent versus mobile.
Yeah.
yeah, so
That's
food
that.
carts are not structures. And so that they
But
don't.
they're permanent fixtures.
Food carts are on wheels.
They're
so
not,
they-
So
they're
mobile
not permanent.
structures.
Yeah, they're not permanent fixtures.
They're
I
not
mean, they
permanent-
might-
They're not
might-
permanent fixtures from a code standpoint.
Yes.
But from a community standpoint,
Okay. Yeah, but not from a code standpoint.
Now we're in the weeds, let's go.
Yeah, so food cart colors aren't covered in the downtown design review.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to direct staff to look into
no.
including that, then this is
I
the
just want to
time.
clarify.
but- Okay, yeah. They don't apply.
Okay, so as a planning commission, maybe we'd give a collective nod that we're okay moving on with this with the paint colors. Is there
Yeah.
any other questions on it? Tom, you got a question?
I don't see her nodding. This was her question, and
Just ask her if she's okay.
She said, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah, I'm good.
I.
Okay.
Okay.
So- All right, so we can kind of table that until towards the end of the meeting that the paint we're okay with. Tom, you get to choose the next one. You get 50-50. You want to go with the psilocybin or parking? Both of them are hot button issues.
Parking,
Parking? Okay, let's go parking. Here we go.
Here we go.
All right.
I love the parking. I love it, the idea of making that reviewable personally.
What are your thoughts, Tom?
Are they asking
we
that,
all know my thoughts.
are they asking that each business have more control over the parking in front of their business?
No, it would basically be when a business comes to the city to get their business license, and we check to see if they're providing the amount of off-street parking that's required in our code. If they're not able to do that and they feel that they shouldn't be held to that standard for whatever space restrictions or the actual amount of traffic that they expect at the business, if this modification passes, they would be able to apply for a modification, and then that application would come before you, the planning commission, to consider whether or not you would allow for a modification or like a reduction in the amount of parking that was required. Does that make sense?
Okay, now, see, I see if we can control the buildings, the industrial area, okay. But how do we really tell people they can't park in downtown core? And not get out of the car and go somewhere else?
So,
I don't quite understand.
It's not about people parking, it's about the businesses'
Okay.
parking spaces.
How do you do that then?
so like the school and the Deep Creek Learning Center was required, what, 6 spots or something?
I don't remember, but yeah, they have the parking in front, but also, well, Broadway's it's a different example. Oh, yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's different because there's no parking required for any businesses
That's
on-
what I- that's
within
what
100
I
feet of
was-
Broadway there. But-
So in the backup here, Tom, there's a couple examples. The All In Sports, which is the sports
Right,
facility
right.
down in the industrial park, was required to, by city code,
Yeah,
63 off-street parking spots.
and I know that, but
63.
I just got stuck in here that you were also talking about the city core, and you can't do that. Really, you can, but you tell people that anyway, so.
The code does not require parking
What?
space. The code doesn't require parking spaces
Oh, okay,
in that section on Broadway.
I knew that.
Yep.
But in like a instance of the batting cages and stuff down there, you required 63, but there wasn't a realistic way they could actually do that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there wasn't. I mean, they didn't have space on site. So what they needed to do was secure an agreement with a neighboring property that they could, as kind of an overflow, that they could use their parking spaces as overflow if need be. But yeah, our code how can I say, there wasn't another way to kind of circumvent or calculate a different requirement for all in sports.
Sure.
So yeah, having a mechanism like that would have been really helpful
Mhm.
in that, yeah,
I
in that
get it.
case.
And so at the end of the day, if there's an issue and whatever the property owner, business owner disagrees with what the city spits out for parking spots, they come before us, we litigate it and we either say, yes, we agree with staff, or no, you get 2 less. Or
Yeah.
whatever the answer is.
Yeah,
And then for that particular case, that's it.
yes,
And then the next person could argue or come in and do the same thing, but it stands alone. Each one stands alone.
it's case by case, yes.
not
And
creating
it's yes, and it's
precedent.
agreement for one applicant, exactly, yeah.
And for a limited period of time.
Mm,
They have to renew it
Is there a
every,
time-
no,
time
actually, that
limit
was
on this?
changed.
that was changed.
That was changed.
Could I ask whether this would also apply to somebody wanting to put a residential building in downtown or a multi-use building that's commercial and residential? And I just ask because I've had conversations with developers who are interested in putting stuff downtown, and the parking requirements ended up being what made it
That's a
impossible
that's
to
a
do.
good question, because I've watched 2 cars park over here, the new building. Get out, the business was open, and they went up the steps.
Parking in a business parking lot.
No, it was on the street,
Oh,
but, so,
Could be a friend of, could.
but, so the business didn't have any on-street parking, so
gotcha.
so obviously they've had to go with the Ace Hardware.
Well,
And they really like that, so.
Well, the people that live in those residents probably have off-street parking themselves, I'm hoping.
Behind the, yep.
Yeah, behind it. But any friend or who comes over would probably be relegated to be parking on street somewhere. Or, in the case of like Ace Hardware, they're, in Ace's parking lot, which isn't prime,
Hmm.
but.
So does it cover residential?
Yeah, just to answer Tara's question, the way the code is written right now, and I'll just read the procedural part. A request for a planning commission parking adjustment shall be initiated by a property owner or authorized agent by filing a land use application. So it does not restrict the modification request to business. So it could be the owner of a residential property as well.
Well, I keep thinking of the hundred apartments across the street here, and that property isn't gonna hold 100 cars. You know.
Well, it has,
Well,
it already meets the code though for parking requirements, right?
right, it meets the code, but you know, one car per, I think it's probably car per unit. Was that what it was? Is that even realistic?
For
For-
multifamily,
For
Yeah.
the
like apartments?
Lakeshore Apartments, I believe it was.
The
It was-
code right now is one parking space per dwelling unit for
And-
multifamily.
And their layout did have the parking.
Yeah, I
spaces.
think it exceeded it by a few.
Yeah, it's like
Was it-
105 or
One of, yeah, it
106,
was like
something
105 or
that.
something, yeah.
I mean, you're hoping that's the case, so, but what's the overflow? What happens when it hits overflow though? Where's it go?
There's
Uh,
there's no provision in the code right now. I mean,
No.
if we want to take on a big elephant, we could say
Hmm.
that that's now two. But I'm sure that there's land use at the state level that requires. Does it get into that level at the state with the comp plans?
It does for cities of a certain size. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
think, I mean, we just, as you'll, or most of you will remember, we did the housing code amendments in 2021, 2022. Some of those amendments resulted in decreases in parking requirements. So,
Sure.
yeah, I don't think that the state rules apply to Estacada. I don't think we're big enough.
Not for, I think the only thing that applies to Estacada is the rules regarding ADUs. And you can't require parking for an ADU. 'Cause
Okay.
I think that's 5,000 residents was the threshold for that.
Is it
one.
now? Okay.
Yeah, they
okay.
lowered it last year.
Yeah, I think that there, I mean, there are a
Year
few
before,
that
maybe.
apply, yeah, there's a few that apply to cities our size. I think like the rule that any like R1, basically any lot that allows for a single family home also has to allow a duplex now. I think
Yeah.
that that's a statewide law. But as far as parking, maybe that's the only one that
I'm trying to project
from the
this
state.
particular ordinance into the future about other apartment complexes that as they develop.
Mhm.
Especially there's one planned on Eagle Creek right by Deuce Road there. And, you know, even if, I don't know if they're, you know, 2-bedroom units or 1-bedroom or a combination of both, you know, and, you know, you're thinking 2 cars per unit. You know, that's, I don't know. That's a lot of parking spots for that, you know. And where are they putting their overflow to? There's nowhere to put overflow on there because you're not gonna be parking on Eagle Creek and you're not gonna be parking on Deuce. Where are you parking, you know? Or back in the neighborhoods. I'm sure nobody's gonna like that either, you know?
I mean, I think the average per unit parking requirements, those were, I would imagine, developed based on the standard or average usage at complexes like that over time. I don't think they're necessarily arbitrary decisions in Estacada, and you know, maybe it's 1 per unit, but those estimates assume that at any given times, some residents aren't going to have cars, some residents are going to be out of town, some residents are going to be working, and probably on an average, one spot per unit has been found to be adequate. I like the idea of us having more flexibility to accommodate situations where less parking lots or less parking spots could be required, so that we can expand more multifamily in downtown cores, or you know, places where there's other upsides to it, but parking could be a barrier to things. And this proposal here seems to give us more flexibility to consider those on a case-by-case basis, which seems positive to me.
I just want to make sure that we're looking at it the proper lens here, you know, that, you know, we're looking at worst case scenarios, best case scenarios, that's fine. You know, unfortunately, we're in a spot where everybody has to be mobile. I mean, resources for trucking people in and out of here are, no, they're fairly good.
Yeah, we have fairly good public transportation. And I will say there was something introduced last year that went into effect Senate Bill 1537, which allows for an exception to a lot of different things, and parking minimums is one of the exceptions that a developer can ask of us.
Sure.
And the threshold for us giving that exception is very low.
Well, I was
So
before-
even if we put this in our code and we don't say it doesn't apply to residential, if a property comes in and they want to ask for an exception, they just have to meet this threshold and then we have to say yes.
Sure.
I just do want to point out that those exceptions have to be tied to the creation of housing.
Yes.
Sure.
It's not just anyone.
Yeah. I get
So
that.
this modification process would apply more broadly than the exceptions for 1537.
Okay. And ultimately, if there's a question on it, it comes back to us. right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yep.
exactly.
That's right.
You would be the decision makers there. And then if there were appeals requested, then that would go to council.
Well, I just want to, I'm kind of looking at the Gumby effect. I want to make sure that if we need to mold it and stretch it and do whatever we need to do to it to make it fit our circumstances, that we can do that easily and not have to do a lot of extra work we don't need to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Terry, you got anything else to add on this one?
Nope.
Okay. So are we okay kind of tabling this one for the rest of the meeting? Till the end?
I would never be happy with the park.
That's okay.
Yeah, I know it had nothing to do with us, but you go home, you go to Clackamas. They got that trailer park that requires one person to park in there. And any other cars is right along the side of that highway, 324.
How long at Carver there?
I just don't want to see that happen here. And that, that's my main goal, is make sure we have enough parking. If we're gonna build a duplexes or apartments, houses, that's great, but let's get some parking in there too. For at least 2 cars. When you buy a house out here, you have to have at least 2 parking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, if I could just point out something, there is a mechanism that's written into the code that would allow for revoking a modification if it was found to be problematic in any way. If there was just like, too many people were parking on the street or it was causing a safety hazard or anything like that, it could come back before a planning commission. And yeah, there would be another hearing to see whether or not it made sense to revoke the modification.
Okay. We're good to go?
but like I said, that's my own concern, is that parking
Okay.
problem.
That's a good one. All right, let's keep rolling on here.
All right,
We have one left.
one last.
And as the person that lives out of the city limits, I didn't even realize that the city of Escada voted on the civil
Yeah.
assignment on the November election. So voted to not allow it within the city limits.
Yep.
Okay. And so this is just bringing our code up to speed.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Question on that.
Mhm.
The definitions make sense. We gotta have it in there because it's a new thing.
Right.
At any point, can that go to a vote again and revert that decision?
I imagine so. I don't think that it's permanent. I mean, was it a what's it called, ballot measure?
It
Is
was
that-
it was a ballot measure.
Yeah.
But you could go through the process where you would put a ballot measure on the ballot so people could get enough signatures and then have it put on the ballot.
This would have to go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I don't know anything about drugs. I'm just gonna be upfront about it. But I do know that the medical versus recreational, like in the marijuana sense.
Mm.
Oregon adopted the medical and then eventually rolled into the recreational, right?
That's right.
So this is more recreational.
I don't think that recreational is
It's still-
legal in
it's not
Oregon
legal.
yet. I think this is basically just, it would prohibit the production, processing, and then licensed service centers from being established in the city.
and again, this goes back to me not knowing anything about drugs.
No, it's
But
okay.
is there any chance that a high school pharmacy type location could, a doctor could recommend, here's some Adderall and here's some of this stuff that falls into this category? Does that preclude high school pharmacy, a licensed pharmacist from,
The way that, from my understanding is you have to be a licensed center. So you go like you're going to your therapist, they walk you through the process. They don't prescribe the drugs for you to take home and do at home. You're
Okay.
doing it under supervision,
Okay.
kind of like a day treatment.
okay,
Yeah, I don't think that just regular old pharmacies are allowed to prescribe psilocybin.
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know where we were in the spectrum of drugs, so I
Mhm.
apologize for my ignorance on this. It's something I haven't dabbled in. So, okay, that helps my background on it. I'm sure there's other questions.
Honestly, I don't have any problem with this at all. I mean, it's, you know, it was voted on. You know, and this is probably the correct move to take for it, to just get definitions down, the codes out there. You know, we've now kind of condensed it into controlled substances. And again, we're looking at the lanes of moving forward. If anything else like this comes up, we don't have to do much more than just add it to the definitions list, you know, and add it to our codes. Psilocybin is a psychogenic drug, for you if you want to know. It's psychogenic. It makes you euphoric, you know, and my understanding of it anyway. And I don't, you know, I don't see any purpose for it in being an Estacada, although we're probably an excellent growing environment for it. You know, and
I think the whole Pacific Northwest is. but-
yeah. But
Sarah, you got anything to add on this?
I just would, I mean, I wish that this was in a separate proposal. I mean, for one thing, you read those goals at the beginning, Alan, and one of them was something about being fostering businesses, being supportive of business. And both of the substances singled out in this controlled substances thing are I don't know anything about the psilocybin business. I didn't even really fully understand that it was legal or whatever, but I know marijuana is booming and is a huge industry in Estacada, the growing of it. And we've singled it out to make it so that it's not, that we've made where you can put a weed store so expensive, so prohibitively expensive, as the person that came last week told us, and as the city knew when it was making those rules, we've treated it really different than any other business. And the reasons for that, I don't really know what they are, but I just personally don't want to vote yes on any 101 facing a lawsuit at some point. But I love the two other amendments. I think they're great. I want to vote yes on them. I don't want to have to vote yes on this one. So that's my caveat, is I'd love to vote separately on it.
well, let me put it to you like this, Tara. You know, for alcohol, you have the OLCC, which, you know, controls it, you know, distribution and product control. And psilocybin really doesn't have that same sort of thing. I know they're licensed like that, but you know, we have to think about a psychogenic drug as being dangerous in a way.
I
And-
mean, there's no possible metric by which, I mean, and I want to preface this by saying I do drink alcohol and I don't smoke pot or do psilocybin or whatever, mushrooms, whatever, but I'm aware enough to know that there's no metric by which marijuana or mushrooms are more dangerous on a social level, on a medical level, than alcohol. And we don't have yes, there's an OLCC, there's also regulations around marijuana and mushrooms, but in Estacada, we don't even, I've said this before in this, we don't even say that a bar can't be right next to a school. We have no regulations about where you can sell liquor whatsoever. We're putting in a high school space downtown within stone's throw of like 5 different bars. So I, that's just, that's the thing. I don't expect my feelings about this to change whether this will get passed, but I just personally would love it if we could break them into different things.
Is there any objection with breaking these into 3 separate things and voting on them as a planning commission?
I do.
Well, it's presented as an ordinance, a package, so you could suggest that, for instance, if there's consensus on this, you could recommend that the psilocybin code amendments be stricken and be brought back as a separate ordinance.
If all it does is create work for you guys, for you, Alan, and other staff, I don't want to do that. I guess I could just vote no on the whole thing or whatever, but
Mhm.
that to me is the problem with something being packaged as an ordinance package when they're just like, one of these items was controversial enough that there needed to be a ballot measure about it, and then these other ones are about paint colors. So I don't want to create a big thing and make everybody accommodate my feelings on this particular one, but maybe we could, if it's not easy to do on this one, maybe we could in the future break some of these things out.
Okay.
I will clarify that even if you did not pass this, it would still not allow psilocybin because the ballot measure said that is not allowed inside. the city.
Right,
Okay,
so
just
this-
I
wanna
know,
make sure
yeah,
that
I
you
just don't want
understand
to,
that.
I
Okay.
just like when we had to approve the marijuana one, that bothered me too. I just don't want to, I just feel like it's future lawsuit material.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
As I said before, and I apologize, then, but I said I would not bring it up again. The drugs is a problem. I am a former foster parent. Now I adopted those kids for them. And just watching the kids grow up with their disabilities because of marijuana and any other drug that that the state has said that the parents took. I will not support anything to do with drugs. Where the voting thing is concerned, I disagree with the parking. I've always disagreed, but as one person, I say, let's pass it to the city council as is.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, the first 2 issues. Yeah, I'm okay with both of them. Psilocybin, since it's already been voted on, but what we're really doing here is just putting it to code. And with another vote of the people, that code could go away just as easily. I think it'd be intelligent to move with all 3 of these issues and just get it done, because it's going to go to code anyway, eventually, and if you're a yes vote or a no vote, that's okay. You can speak your own mind right here and right now. So I think that's the way to look at this thing, because I think it being in our code is more important at this point. So we're validating the voters, what the voters voted for. And that's what we need to do here,
Yeah, exactly. This is not asking you to weigh in on the policy of it. It's more just to implement the voters' decision.
Yeah, I shouldn't have opened a can of worms by even mentioning about that, but it got brought up, and so I responded. But I just think it's an issue of procedure that, to me, it doesn't make sense to have these things all in one thing, and that can be a future consideration, like I said, if not this time.
Thanks for that, Sarah.
In the code, by calling it controlled substances, are we tying it to marijuana or are they still saying two separate things?
Well, just controlled substances being the kind of umbrella subject in that chapter. So you, before, as you see, it's a long title with marijuana in it. It just seemed like the most logical place to put the prohibition. And if we're gonna put psilocybin in there, then it doesn't make sense anymore to call it marijuana specifically. So I just suggested that title as a way to make it a more general category.
Okay, but they'll still say two separate things. in
I
the
mean,
code.
everything that's in green. So yeah, if you look at the code section, where is that? That is, yeah, chapter 1665. So it would basically just strike out the title, change the title, and then all the code would say the same, except there would be the additions in green. And then there's that one small correction of a zone reference. But other than that, it would just be a couple additions relating to psilocybin. And all the marijuana code would stay the same. That's untouched.
Okay. Any other stuff on this right now?
What did he just say?
All we're doing is we're just cleaning up the current
On that,
on the marijuana code and we're just making a controlled substance chapter that has both marijuana and psilocybin in it now.
Yeah.
Nothing's changing with the marijuana side of things.
Yeah.
We're just adding.
So we put a header over the top of it, Tom. We put controlled substances. So in terms of, we got one controlled substance is marijuana and it's got its statutes. And then the next one will be psilocybin and it has its statutes, right? And if anything else comes down the trail, it will be under controlled substances and it'll have its statutes. And
I
that's,
just, I
that's
got
the way,
doing
yeah.
issues and I just didn't hear exactly what he said. That's what, nothing against anything.
Sure.
All right, sounds like we're somewhat on consensus on this. So I have one last question on this chapter 16 change. So there was something, I'm trying to find it on the packet. And it was regarding signage and the mayor said something and let me find it.
Oh, the staff report. Yeah, that was for the downtown design review. And so that would be exhibit 3
Exhibit 3.
under background, like the middle of the first page.
There we go.
Exhibit 3. New structures.
So this is more about the paint colors, right?
Okay, yeah. So this first staff report, so there's exhibit 3 and exhibit, what is it?
The 3 is the one I'm wondering about because
Yeah.
the mayor's talking about something with inconsistency of window transparency.
Yeah, so those issues were decided by council to not pursue.
Hmm.
About window transparency. So the issues that are brought up in the staff report, only the ones that related to paint, staff was directed to draft amendments for.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
For paint and the noticing for type 1.
I'm sorry, paint and noticing, which also relate to paint, but yeah, the
Is that
noticing.
about frosting out the windows like at the school and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
you
well,
think
for,
to the
well, for,
business.
for downtown, for the design review, there's transparency requirements and, there's a question, the question was raised as to whether we wanted to make those more enforceable. Yeah, but it was decided not to do that.
And we want more transparency? Is it?
We,
Well, it depends on who you
Right.
talk to. So, some people were, yeah, I guess you could watch the council meeting on this, which is
Okay,
October 28th, but yeah, it was just discussed whether or not once a downtown design review is done and transparency requirements are met, yeah, it was an open question as to whether the city should enforce those into the future, like make sure that those transparency standards were kept up or if we would allow for coverings to be put on the windows or
Okay,
that kind of thing. And it was just left open. So it sounds like now, businesses are able to control the transparencies they like,
okay,
continue to. Yeah.
all
that's
right,
that.
that answers that.
All right.
Okay, so are we good on everything? We talked about parking, we talked about paint, we talked about psilocybin, the 3 Ps,
Sure.
not the 3 Ps we're normally used to though. Proper planning prevents, that's 5 Ps.
There you go.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Tara, you got anything else to add on these?
Nope.
Okay. So we're making a recommendation adoption of the ordinance, and this goes on to the city.
Do we have anybody?
Yes, this goes on to council.
Yeah. Do we take public comment on any of this?
Oh, right. Yeah. So let's
Yeah,
go back.
everybody's coming up now.
Well.
Any
I don't know if
public
it's anybody
testimony?
online or not, so
We
Yeah, we will
have
take
anybody?
public testimony at this
Okay.
point.
All right.
that we can skip it.
So we're gonna, for formality, we're gonna open the public hearing and close it without anybody asking to submit testimony because nobody's here. So we'll go back into the planning commission meeting and vote.
There we go.
So we need a motion, a second, then we can discuss further if we need to. Hopefully we don't. And then we can go on to vote.
I move that we recommend adoption of the ordinances with staff findings as presented.
I second that.
All right, so we got a motion, we got a second. Any discussion needed? I think the only thing that I'm gonna second what Tara said, in the future, if we have these not like ordinances, maybe to separate out the one that doesn't mix,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
if
I
it
hear
makes
that.
sense.
Well, yeah, the reason that it makes sense from our standpoint is that it's all the development code. It's just, and
All chapter
the,
16.
it's all chapter 16 and the process for doing this is, it's time consuming. And, as much as we can bundle these kinds of things, we like to do that. And like I said, the psilocybin, even though it doesn't, relate on the surface to the other two issues, it really is just enshrining something that is already been decided. It's like, it's just kind of inserting a decision that's already been made.
Okay.
So that's the reason behind what we did. But I definitely, I'm hearing what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand or say aye.
I,
All right, motion carries 5-0.
Thanks.
With that, we have no public comments, we have no public. Commission comments? And then adjournment. Meeting in February?
Yes.
I believe so. Yes,
What date is that gonna be?
It's the 19th. Let me confirm. Yes,
What's on that
February
agenda?
19th. We might have that conditional use
Okay.
if the public noticing timelines
Right.
work. Otherwise, you will have to review applicants for the current vacancies.
I will be gone the 19th.
Okay.
And I will
Well,
be
then
gone the
TBD on
time
that
leading up
then.
to it.
Okay. Wait, what was that you said?
I will be gone from the 13th through the 19th.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can discuss later. Figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could do my best to
When
follow
would it be?
through, even though I might be one of those
March
people
or
actually
April?
reviewed it, so. Which might be an interesting.
March 19th.
Okay,
So-
we'll figure that out in the next month.
Okay.
And other than that,
I got a person. What are we going to do with the two people that not showing up to the meetings?
it's a good question.
You know, because it used to be, I'm sorry, but it used to be there was a limitation they could miss. You know, and I don't want to lose it, don't get me wrong, but they know we scheduled it 2:00.
Yep.
You know,
You know, I think Ryan Carpenter, if anybody, has pretty much a legitimate, Ryan is a great asset to have, And frankly, he's a huge community leader, so
Is that rule has ever changed or not?
There's
think-
still a
okay, go
rule that if a member misses 2 consecutive meetings without an excused absence, the board can decide to bring that up to council for removal. They can recommend removal of that person.
And one's up for, up anyway, so.
Who did you say was, up for the? for
Uh,
Ryan?
Hartwig is up, his term is up. Sager, your term is up.
Or we're gonna have at the
Stahl
same time.
and Perkins.
Okay. I
Yeah.
will have a conversation with Ryan because I speak with him frequently. I do know that he showed up for the December meeting and he called me. He's like, "Where is everybody?" I said, "We don't have a December meeting." So,
That's funny.
So he did show up.
but nobody, well, we didn't have one. So, anyway, well, I'll talk to him. If I can catch Richard Hartwig, and maybe he won't put an application in to continue on. So,
See, I talked to Richard and he hasn't said nothing about not showing up. He had the Christmas trees that I would visit in November, but
yeah,
I don't know what his problem today is.
Sure.
it's a good question though. Well,
So if I talk to him, I talk to him
yeah,
about
We
it.
need bodies.
and that officially happens next meeting.
You
Review
could
an
put it
applicant.
out to March. It should be, I'm tentatively looking at it now, because I think the council votes on it at the second meeting in March. So let me double check with my calendar.
When do the terms officially expire?
March 31st.
As long as it was implemented by the end of March.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you, Al.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
sure.
You
So
got stuff
right
to-
now,
Yeah.
council has the committee appointments on the March 10th meeting. We could put it, if you guys weren't able to make a decision in February, you wanted to move that, like if you had nothing else on your agenda and you wanted to move the decision to March, we could put it off till March 24th because their terms technically don't end until March 31st. So council could have it on their March 24th agenda if you guys wanted to have it at your March 19th meeting.
All right, well, let's, we can communicate.
Yeah.
In,
Yeah, we'll figure
Yep.
that
in the
out.
off time here and we'll figure out a game plan on all this.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, if nothing else, let's adjourn.
Done.
Thanks.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Tara.